Welcome back to the podcast, everybody, here from the Teaching Tax Flow team. So we are going to get into today, we are going to uncover those hidden taxes. That's right, we're uncovering hidden taxes just for you, the listener of this show. But before we get into it, let's take a brief moment and thank our episode sponsor.
This podcast is brought to you by Strategic Associates. Are you a high-income earner, real estate investor, or successful entrepreneur who is frustrated by having to pay $75,000 or more of annual tax liability? If so, Strategic Associates can help. Your first step to saving thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, is to contact Roger Roundy at roger@strategicag.net or by calling 801-641-2956 and be sure to tell him TTF sent you.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Teaching Tax Flow podcast. One thing that you probably don't hear on this show, especially at the beginning, is you might not even know who I am. So my name is, okay, I like the pause. You don't need to know who I am. Who gives a crap? We're here. Chris Picciurro. Welcome back, good sir. How are you?
John, watch this trick. What am I? I'm hidden. We're talking about hidden taxes today. And if you're not watching the YouTube channel, you should be. If you're listening to this, thank you. Thanks for hitting us on Spotify, Apple, iTunes. Give us a great 5-star review. But we're talking about hidden taxes today. We're going to jump right into it because when we talk about legally and ethically reducing the tax you pay in your lifetime, most people think about income tax. Some people think about estate tax. We've had a lot of great content on that. But man, there are a lot of what I call hidden taxes out there. If you recently went to a restaurant or looked at your bill on anything, you will see, dang, I'm not seeing that. So a lot of times hidden tax is something that you don't file a tax return for. So it's something you're just paying as you go along. We know that tax agencies are involuntary business partner, and we wanted to take those little cockroach taxes that are usually hide in the dark and shine a little light on them today.
Let's do it. And if you're not watching this and you're only listening to it, you're missing out on Chris's little magic tricks here. He's an illusionist now. He's getting ready for Taxposia here that we're going to in Vegas here pretty soon. So he's practicing for his moment to shine. Or
yes,
or
I'm out again. See, I like to jump in and jump out. So
tax happens.
Probably, yeah, exactly. Probably the number one hidden tax that we see. So remember, we're defining what is a hidden tax. A non-income based tax has nothing to do. If you make $20 million a year or no dollars a year, you're still paying these taxes. They have nothing to do with your income. The largest hidden tax is absolutely sales tax. And here, many of the states that have higher sales tax had interestingly, no state income tax are the states that are growing and thriving. But a sales tax is quite simply a tax imposed on the retail sales of tangible personal property or certain services, depending on what state you're in. So if you go and buy something, a television, a whatever, a lot of times you're going to see a sales tax. And 45 states plus DC impose a sales tax, according to our friends over at the Tax Foundation. Now, some things are exempt from it. It's a state-by-state basis, sometimes food, digital goods, medicine, services, but ultimately, sales tax is our number one hidden tax. And, yeah, we see it, kind of like John, and we're going to talk about this in a couple more minutes. Travel is probably the industry with the biggest hidden tax. You ever book something on either Airbnb, VRBO, you book your room and you see literally 40% additional in taxes and fees.
That's got to be like a marketer's dream, right? It's like we have this client, you're like, hey, we can totally put out there that it's $99 a night. Like that's, gives you context to market off of. But then, yeah, you're right. You go to check out and you're like, what in the world? You're like, your head is already calculated. It's all right. Well, I got this. It's $99 a night. I'm staying there for 3 nights. It's probably $354. You get there and you're like, now how in the heck is it $685?
I mean, those think about like Ticketmaster, StubHub, SeatGeek. Those guys are weasels sometimes. They're weasels and they sneak in a 25 to 35% convenience fee. Convenience fee means a hidden tax. So sales tax, and you commonly pay that on a lot of different things. And sometimes it affects travel and entertainment and that sort of stuff. So the next one's something called franchise and excise tax. Not every state assesses a franchise and excise tax. The state of Tennessee is notorious for slapping that on the businesses because we don't have an individual personal tax return. But a franchise and excise tax could play a role and this is going to play a role if you have a business. If you form an LLC, your corporation, you're typically going to pay a franchise and excise tax. It doesn't matter many times, or you're going to have to pay the Secretary of State an annual fee. It's not always based on your income. Sometimes it's based on the assets that you have. And it's kind of a sneaky hidden tax. So that's that franchise. Now, I did say a hidden tax is a tax you pay when you don't file a tax return. So that one's kind of a hybrid. But if some states, if you just simply, I know our friends in California, we haven't thrown them under the bus in a while. They spank you with an $800 per entity tax. If your LLC made a dime or a million dimes, it's an $800 annual fee just to have the privilege of being an LLC or a corporation in that beautiful state of California.
And Chris, this is for, some of the people that have listened to us now for 140 plus episodes and watched us now for 40 plus of those. You're right. I feel like we haven't razzed on our friends out west in a long time there. Ironically enough, we have met a handful of people in person who are from California that have listened, and they actually like when we get them shit.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll beep that one out, but it is what it is. And it kind of makes it fun because, I know people that have moved from California that are self-employed. One of our neighbors behind us at our house has, and he's like, man, this is like winning the lottery on a small level, just leaving the state for as much as they get taxed on stuff. So, there we go. There's our dig at the state here for a while. We'll leave you alone, Californians, for a little bit, not too long. But
well, hey, you know what? I have made friends with, I'm serious, very close friends with tons of Californians that have moved here too. As you know, I like to say, and you and our buddy Jim Ingersoll like to razz me a little when I was kicked off that podcast, beautiful and historic Franklin, Tennessee.
It was a good episode. If anybody missed that one, go back and listen to it. We give Chris a hard time.
Another big one, real estate transfer tax. So if you transfer property from one party to another property, a lot of times there's a transfer tax. I've been subject to it with properties in Florida. Some states it's very small. Some states it's large. In New York State, it's like 0.4% of transfers over $500,000, which is, in New York City has an additional tax, which is most properties in New York State, really. In Florida, it's 70 cents per $100 of consideration. That's significant. That's 0.7%. So even if you sell a property at a loss, John, and pay no income tax on that, you are paying a state transfer tax.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
Wow, talk about it. That's a bite, man.
That's more than a nibble. That's a bite.
Wow, I had no idea.
Some states actually charge a transfer tax if you transfer property from your name into an LLC. So you've got to really be careful about that.
And with the transfer tax there, I won't dig into it too much, but I'm sure a lot of people don't know either. So that's very similar. I think if it's just off the top of my head is, you go to sell a car or buy a car, even if you don't pay anything for it, you're still paying that, like I forget what
vehicle
it is here
tabs,
in Michigan.
yeah.
It's like the same thing, right?
Right.
But
that's
wow,
another hidden
man.
tax. You actually had a good comment. Congratulations. We're proud of you. No, that's a great point. That vehicle tab. Sometimes you've got to pay a transfer tax on vehicles. Sometimes some states, like Michigan, actually has a pretty modest. It's called the ad valorem or tax on your vehicle tabs, because in theory, that tax is based on the value of the vehicle and it goes down over time. Where some states it's very expensive to own a vehicle.
Like I remember in South Carolina, I'm going to get it wrong to the point. Somebody, again, please correct me if I am. When I lived in Charleston County in South Carolina, bought a new vehicle. I think the vehicle was like $41,000 or something out the door a while ago. The sales tax was capped at $500, but the registration fee was like $800 or $900 or something a year, and then it went down by the mileage, which I looked at it like, what in the world? Like, way to complicate a system, but you know. And then he had people out there getting fake oil change stickers saying their brand new car is 65,000 miles on it because there's a high mileage vehicle tax deduction or something out there. But it's an
There's
interesting
always,
thing.
yeah, there's always something going on. So yeah, so a lot of times transferring that real estate, it's like sometimes it's called a tax stamp or something. Um, it can be expensive, and you got to look at first. But Florida's a doozy, man. Um, in some states exempt like transfers from you to an LLC that you own, but you know, like Florida's a tricky one, and we have a
And
lot
that's
of
a good
friends down there.
and that's a good thing too, Chris. I mean, we talk about tax planning. I mean, that's something that I unless you really know somebody that knows that market very well, right? I mean, you might not even think of that, right? Because you might go in, you're like, hey, my margins are kind of short. Say it's a fix and flip or something along those lines, and you don't know that's there. I mean, that's a
I
you
mean,
know,
yeah, and that's why you want to work with professionals. I mean, we've had Parker Borofsky of Movement Mortgage is a great resource when it comes to mortgages, and we've had Crystal Ball on from Panama City Beach, a phenomenal realtor. So, but my point is when you're buying that property, if down the road you think you're either going to transfer it in and out of an LLC due to financing or various things, you've got to think about that, especially in Florida in that short-term rental market. So it's a team approach, but just be aware of those transfer taxes on real estate and the jurisdictions.
makes sense. And I know the next one we're going to talk about. I won't say what it is. I'll let you do that. But you would definitely pay this tax extremely high because you would be getting a lot of this if you didn't know about that tax that we just spoke about in real estate. Drowning your
Absolutely.
sorrows.
So the next tax is called a quote unquote sin tax. And, that's not my term for it, but a sin tax is an additional tax beyond your normal sales tax on certain items that the government calls a quote unquote sin to consume. Again, we're not the church, we're not the state, but in general, like alcohol and cigarettes are the largest types of product that are subject to both federal and state quote unquote sin tax. So it's basically they're discouraging consumption, so they want to raise revenue to fund public health by hitting people with a large tax. And actually, some states have quite a bit of sales tax on gas purchasing too, if they really are trying to be green.
Yeah, Chris. I mean, we could take this and expand out it, very far. And a lot of states. I mean, I'm not going to say what side of the fence I am on with that specifically. But Michigan has a lot of consumable products now that a lot of other states do not, and they tax the crap out of them. And I believe that there has been some studies done that very minimal people will stop purchasing it, even if the taxes went up on it. So maybe that's why they refer. I just think of like the sin tax name, right? Like maybe that's just kind of where it came from. Is they could tax the crap out of it, as high as they want to, really, in a sense, and people still consume it, right? So who knows?
I mean, think about I know we work in in the Defeating Taxes private Facebook group. We do a lot of education, and a lot of that comes from the Tax Foundation, and they break down all types of different taxes. And they did a big article on cigarette tax. So the federal cigarette tax is about $1 a pack, but states vary. New York, it's like $4.35 per pack. California is a little under $3 per pack. That's a significant tax. If you let's say you smoke a pack of cigarettes a day, that's New York, that's $5 a day times 365 days. That's a couple $1,000 just in the tax, not even the cigarettes.
Well, there's people that, right? I mean, it's a legit problem from what I understand. People like smuggling in cigarettes from New Jersey or somewhere into New York and making a
Mhm.
business out of it. I mean, it's a legitimate business, but
Yeah, no, I mean
it's wild.
that's happening.
Can you imagine that joining like NYPD and be like, you know what, you're on the anti-smuggling tobacco, whatever task force.
Well, I mean, it's legit. I mean, it's definitely something that's out there.
Sure.
So so we'll move away from cigarettes and let's talk about alcohol tax. You know, sometimes they go hand in hand. No pun intended. I actually pun intended, right? You could have one in one hand, one in the other.
That's very true.
But there's a federal excise tax per gallon of alcohol, about $13.50 for spirits. Wines about $1 to $3 a gallon. So that'll last you till noon, John. The way you operate.
See, that's,
Just kidding.
I'm
I
an
know you're not a.
alcoholic.
We know you're not a wine drinker, John. You're much more sophisticated than that.
I tried it, and I think I embarrassed you, your wife, and mine at a wine bar. So
I'm never embarrassed, John. I was encouraging you. I was proud of you. And then beers, between $3 and $18 a barrel on the federal side of things, on top of state potential taxes on those. So again, a lot of times, you're paying more for these products because of the quote unquote sin taxes or hidden taxes. I can't tax plan around the cigarette tax. I got tax plan around a lot of other things, but there's no other than telling you not to smoke as much and not to. Remember, we do legally and ethically reduce the tax you pay in your lifetime. So smuggling cigarettes across borders is not a legal or an ethical practice. So
ironically enough, here we are talking about alcohol and cigarette tax. And me and you both grew up very close to the Canadian-American border, where bootlegger was like the thing during the Prohibition, right? So maybe we should do a bootlegging and tax episode.
We could dig out. We could. Well,
I don't know who would get on to talk about it, but
I'm sure. Well, my grandfather told me some interesting stories about people coming over through swimming across the Detroit River and all these other cool things. But anyway, let's wrap it up by a couple other hidden taxes. I touched on them a little bit, but let's put some numbers to it. Hospitality and lodging. So hotel occupancy tax. Now, John, fortunately for you, when you come to the beautiful and historic Franklin, you have your own suite here at our household. But if you didn't, you'd be slapped with a 19 to 15% state and local hospitality and lodging tax. So that's, so a lot of times when you go on to a certain hotel, a big hotel brand's booking site, you might say, hey, $150 a night, that's pretty good. And then it ends up being like $180 a night, right? That's where that free breakfast comes in, and maybe free parking. You feel a little better. Or rental vehicles and stuff. So hospitality and lodging taxes, in expanding on that, travel-related taxes, rental car taxes. John, another tax, tolls, another hidden tax.
I didn't think of that one at all. You are right.
Right. We talked about gasoline taxes. So a bunch of, these type of consumption taxes that, that can eat away at things. So those are just, those are probably the most popular hidden taxes. And I would say, if you're listening to this, if there's a hidden tax that we didn't mention, put it in the comments. Put it in the comments of this YouTube video or in the Defeating Taxes Facebook group. I would love to know about it. Maybe we'll actually create some content. So we're challenging the listeners and the watchers on this episode.
That'd be awesome. And Chris, that's a great place to wrap this one up, right? And yeah, to echo what Chris said there, let's find out what you guys have, in your areas, because some municipalities even have them that, they're not as local, or I should say they're not more geographically widespread, right? Like I can think of some here in our little town outside of Ann Arbor, and it's not the University of Michigan fan base tax. And that's extremely high because they're such a good team. We know how that goes. That's why we get Chris all fired up. He might be able to make his video disappear, but I can mute him if he says anything about U of M. So we're all good here. We're even. But yes, let's do that. Everybody post some stuff. Share it with us. Share it with the community. Let's get it out there. Let's figure out what's there. Now, this is not a, bash your local city on specific stuff conversation, but put them in. Let's see what's there. Let's have a discussion around it. And who knows, might be helping out your neighbor that doesn't know anything's there. So as always, I am not going to let Chris say anything now because he's going to say something about U of M. We'll leave him on the side riding the pine. But we will see everybody back here again next week. Completely different topic, same day of the week. A little bit of a change in the time potentially. Just like I like to change the outro every show. So see everybody later. Have a great week. Remember, tax planning is your friend. See you soon.
The content provided is for educational purposes only. We encourage you to seek personalized investment advice from your financial professional. For all tax and legal advice, please consult your CPA or attorney. Investment advisory services are offered through Cabin Advisors, a registered investment advisor. Securities are offered through Cabin Securities, a registered broker-dealer. The content of this podcast does not constitute an offer of securities. Offerings can only be made through an offering memorandum, and you should carefully examine the risk factors and other information contained in the memorandum.